Operation Undercover Square. This was my bid to fit in with the squares and the Franken squares and every other kind of square that's roaming this country today. So, when I was younger, I was obviously real fucked up inside. And that manifested on my outside is doing real fucked up shit. Because I always felt like everyone was looking at me anyway, which I was wrong about. But I perceived the world that everyone was looking at me anyway, so I would do really crazy shit to show I didn't care. Now, obviously, I did care, or else I wouldn't have been doing freaky shit to fuck with people in the first place. But to prove I didn't care, I had to do weird shit. I don't ask. It doesn't make sense. It's an irrational position. When people say, I don't care, usually what they're saying is, I wish I didn't care so much. But, you know, it would be everything under the sun: tiger striped button up shirt, bright green blazer that's all torn up, purple mohawk, just any ridiculous and stupid thing I could find. I had a shirt with Masha Brady's head on it that was like my prized possession for a long time. And I sincerely liked the Brady Bunch. I really wanted to be part of something like that. It's just, it was never in the cards. It was never in the cards. But the fucked upness I felt, it's unfortunate because I couldn't admit the truth, which was I feel like everyone is looking at me. So I'm going to do crazy shit. Now, no one really was looking at me. What was happening is because I was doing crazy shit, people were looking at me. But in my mind, they were already looking at me. So it was just confirming this delusion that I already had. And this is actually a really common thing that goes on with people. It becomes this self fulfilling prophecy. These delusions or false perceptions we have end up becoming these self fulfilling prophecies by our own actions. It's paradoxical in a way. It's strange how it works out. But because I believed everyone was already looking at me, I would do crazy shit, making people actually look at me, which would then confirm the delusion that people were always looking at me. One day, when I get to be about 28 years old, maybe 29, I ask myself, if you feel like everyone's looking at you, why are you doing this stuff that makes people look at you? Maybe if you stop doing all this crazy shit, people will stop looking at you. I was on to something. And this is the beginning of Operation Undercover Square. But because people have so many similar experiences in America, they have stuff in common. They all went to high school, they all had rites of passage, get a license, get a car, this type of shit. I never did any of that stuff. That stuff had nothing to do with my life. I was completely outside of it. And it's probably one of the reasons I hang out with people that aren't from the US, because we have more in common, especially from, what are called third world countries. I get along with these people. We understand each other. Uh, there's a lot of similar values we have, an understanding of the way life is. But I could never connect well with other Americans. There was just a gulf between us that was insurmountable. they we just never seemed to be speaking the same language, even though we all spoke English. We didn't mean the same things. And after I was like, we have to stop doing all this weird shit all the time. Now, I will say it's important to note that when I was roughly around 28 years old, I had also moved out of the environment I was from. And a friend actually helped me out because his life had fallen apart someplace else. He had come back to town and was like, "Dude, let's get you out of here, man." And if it hadn't been for him helping me, I could have never. I had tried 3 or 4 times to get out on my own, and I always fucked it up. It was only because of the stability he offered me that I could even leave. Without him, that never would have been possible. And I always keep that in my mind when I'm talking to people, because everyone always likes to say, well, I did it all on my own. I pulled myself up. And it's like, I've done a lot of stuff on my own. I've fixed a lot of problems that I have, but I would not have been able to get out on my own. I tried over and over, and I could never do it. And it's only because of him that I was able to do it. Maybe I would have kept trying, and maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. That's not the way things went. This is one of the reasons I put a big emphasis on support. If you don't have support, life is very, very difficult, especially if the people who are supposed to support you work against you, always try to hurt and humiliate you. This is, what family is to many of us. So I always keep that in mind, that I had escaped the chaotic environment that I was from, and things had started to quiet in my head. I had gotten away from the hard drugs, and my thoughts had started to slow down. Because up until that point, up until that 28-year mark and getting out of the chaos, and my thoughts were faster than my head could think. And it often made me think I was really, really crazy, because my thoughts moved so fast and constantly jumped around. They would get caught in these loops, and I would fixate on a word that would just come out of my mouth. And it had nothing to do with what I was thinking about, but it is always some real ugly word. It's very weird stuff. I've seen people that are like, frankly, schizophrenic that do the same things, and I see them get caught in these thought loops. I'm like, I know what you're going through in a way, but I always note that these these changes in myself were only possible because I got out of that environment and I had help getting out of that environment. So, Operation Undercover Square, fitting in, looking at what the squares do, and trying to emulate and mimic the square world. This this is something I became quite good at. Now, obviously at this point I have a little of my own flair into my clothing, but you know, you if you feel like you're different, making yourself dramatically different and making people look at you, you can say you don't care. Maybe you really don't. But I have never met a soul who actually meant it. And I would caution people when they say, I don't care, to reconsider. Because often, like I said, what people mean is, I wish I didn't care so much. And if you do care, then there's no point in fighting it that way. There are other ways to express yourself, other things you can do. But, you know, take it for what it's worth, I guess.